Hello and welcome to F1 Briefings. My name's Alex Harrington. We enjoyed an exciting British Grand Prix last weekend at the Silverstone circuit. Max Verstappen once again showed his dominance as he took P1 for Red Bull again. Behind him, however, that was where the action was. We saw great improvements from McLaren after a number of upgrades, with Lando Norris coming P2 and the new Australian rookie driver Oscar Piastri finishing P4. Lewis Hamilton finished P3 after a lucky safety car. But throughout the whole grid, there was excitement. Silverstone recorded a record attendance of 480,000 people, but soon after the race had finished on the Sunday, there were reports being published to Twitter of verbal abuse from the security staff. These tweets quickly gained momentum, and credible sources, including team engineers, confirmed the aggression. I talked to Lucy, content creator and huge fan of the sport, who was involved in what happened on the Sunday afternoon.
Hi, Lucy. Thanks so much for talking to me today. I asked you completely out of the blue, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day for me to ask you some questions. I was really sad to hear and sorry to hear that this happened to you and other fans of the British Grand Prix. It was a really exciting race. I'm sure this has slightly marred your view of the weekend, but overall, how was your experience?
Okay, so overall, I had a really, really fantastic time at Silverstone. So it was my first ever time doing the full Grand Prix weekend. And my goodness me, like what an experience it was. It was genuinely a huge dream come true. Growing up watching Formula One, I've been watching for as long as I can remember. I never thought I'd actually be there at the track, seeing the cars race. Like lap one of the race, I was literally crying like from happiness because I got a photo of the tears on my face. It was just like, oh my God, this is really happening. And it wasn't just the on-track stuff as well. It was like seeing all the drivers up on the main stage was such an incredible moment. Like when Lewis Hamilton came out, it was like I was crying again because he's been my hero since my childhood. So like, the vibe was amazing. The weather was amazing. Everything was really well organized, like the queuing to get in, car park, everyone it was a really, really well put together event for the most part. But yeah, hugely happy. Everyone was so friendly. Like the race makers especially made it a really special time. Like I was just trying to take a selfie on my grandstand and one of the race makers came over and was like, would you like a picture? I was like, yes, please.
Oh, nice.
So it's brilliant. Yeah, they were all so nice. And just everyone I talked to, like just people around it was so friendly. Like even the queue for the toilets was friendly. It was great.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's important to kind of just make people aware listening to this, that this, what we're about to talk about was a very small part of your experience, and however significant it was, it won't take away from the full.
Yeah, absolutely.
The full weekend.
Like if someone asked me to summarize it in one word, phenomenal. And maybe one bad experience with a security guard isn't gonna take away from my incredible experience whatsoever.
Good. So can you describe in your own words what actually happened?
Okay, so we'd all come onto the track after the race. I actually left my grandstand 15 minutes before the end of the race because I was sat at Luffield, and we headed down to, so me and my friends, we all headed down to the Hamilton Straight to go onto the track. We actually ended up having to run all the way around to Vale because some people were saying you couldn't get on here, so we went all the way around. So by the time we got there, it was already very busy and we were tired and we missed the last 10 laps, but that was fine. So yeah, we got onto a track. It was great. The podium happened and everything. And maybe about an hour, we just all hung out there and it was really nice. My friend said bye. There was some interviews happening in the pit lane that I was watching. So like they had Channel 4 and Sky F1 were just like, Jensen Button was there. So it was really cool to just watch that in the background with a big horde of fans all cheering in the background. It was a really nice vibe. And then, yeah, probably after about an hour, big line of security guards starts coming. And, they were all in their big yellow high-vis jackets and stuff. We obviously listen to them because we need to get moving. And, they've got a job to do. And I fully understand, they need the track cleared. I think that's very fair enough. Like, we've got to get off eventually. But it looked amazing seeing the empty track from the Hamilton Straight. So I was like, wow, I really want a picture of that. So the security guard who was right by me, I actually turned back to him and like while we were walking, I was still walking while I talked to him. And I said, like, would it be all right if I could just take a photo, like just behind you guys? Like I asked if I could just quickly get behind them to get the photo. And the guy said, no, you can't do that. We've got to keep everyone in front of us. Fair enough. So I said, okay, so would it be okay if you guys just like move your heads to the side slightly so I can get the photo? And the two guards there were like, yeah, sure. And they both just leaned slightly so I could get the photo. And while I'm taking the photo, it was a really good photo, by the way. You know, it was a small thing. You know, I'm small. I'm you know, quite timid and harmless. I'm clearly not causing trouble. And I was talking with the security guards near me. This one guy, like, from about halfway along the track, spots me and like he comes straight over and he starts like immediately like shouting and swearing at me, telling me to like move. I'm not going to use the same language that he used. So there are a lot of F words in there, like telling me to move. So I immediately like I panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not trying to cause any trouble here. So I frantically start explaining to him, like I immediately stopped taking the photo. I got the photo, but I don't try and go for any more. And I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. I was just trying to take a photo. These guys said it was okay. He's like, I don't care, move. Like again, more swearing. And it was like, it really shocked me because like I was very clearly cooperating and listening to them and moving. And yeah, it was like, oh, okay. And then, yeah, he just kept swearing at me. So I just said to him back because I felt like he was being very unfair. So I said to him, like, can you please stop swearing at me? And then he said like that he'd swear as much as he effing wanted to. So that was like, oh my goodness. So
No, that sounds awful, and I'm sorry.
yeah.
That's...
So I got back to my new friends who I'd met like on the Hamilton Straight, because we were all kind of stood near each other to watch Jensen Button and friends do their interview, and I was like trying to like maintain my composure, I guess, because you know I'd kind of I guess talked back at him, and I think I told him to calm down at one point. It's all a bit of a blur. I was just like, please calm down. Anyway, so I got back to my group and they were all like, wow, they're being really like strict with us. And like, I just immediately started crying because I was so like shaken by what had just happened. And I really don't like being shouted at. So it was all quite stressful, especially with me being so small. Like this big burly guy, right? He could pick me up with one hand probably. So it was really intimidating and just not a nice experience, especially because I wasn't causing any trouble. It was really embarrassing. I was just like crying on the Hamilton Straight, and then someone recognized me from TikTok, and I was like there with tears down my face. I was like, hello, sorry you have to see me like this. But yeah, it turns out then that everyone else was saying they'd had really similar experiences. So someone who came over a few minutes later said that they'd just been told, like, don't you have a home to go to? And like all sorts of rude comments being made, like especially because no one there was trying to cause trouble, you know, like we're all listening. We all understand they've got a job to do. So yeah, it was just really unnecessary and just felt like they were on maybe a bit of a power trip, because it wasn't just that one guy, it was several security guards across that group. The ones I was talking to were really nice, but some of them were just like a bad egg, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And so as someone with autism, you know, this isn't something you can easily brush off. And the same goes for other people with, you know, their own challenges, their own learning difficulties. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so for me as an autistic person, it was quite difficult to cope with that because, well, first of all, I don't like being shouted at. But second, I have this thing where it's like, I have to follow the rules. Like if there's a rule, I need to follow it, because to me, rules make sense and I need rules. Otherwise, everything falls apart. So, you know, if someone who's, you know, in a position of authority, if they tell me to do something, I'm going to listen, because if people don't listen, then there's going to be chaos, and I don't like chaos. So I'm like, right, I'll follow the instructions. I'll follow the rules. So to be shouted at and basically treated as though I'm not following the rules was really, really upsetting to me, because it felt almost like I was being told off for something that when I hadn't done anything wrong, especially because I'd been given explicit permission by two of the other security guards that it was okay to do that, to take the photo. Yeah, it was just really, really stressful and upsetting to me.
Of course. Yeah, in no way does this excuse the behavior. And you said, you know, it's potentially they were on some sort of power trip. Do you think there's an element of them being tired after a long weekend, especially with talks of, well, actually it's just been confirmed that the calendar is going to be 24 races long. I know, obviously, it's individual races, but even Silverstone, they're talking about increasing it to a 4-day event. Do you think that has, do you think that was a factor at all?
Yeah, I think for sure. I probably, they'd had a long day. It was quite hot. They'd have been standing around in their full security gear. So I can definitely understand why they might have got so frustrated and perhaps taken it out on like innocent fans. It doesn't excuse what they did, obviously, in being so like, rude and scary towards us. But I can definitely empathize with where they were coming from with that. And I guess if perhaps there had been people previously, because everyone in my area was listening and following instructions, but perhaps if they'd encountered people who weren't listening and following instructions, perhaps they were already stressed themselves for having to, maybe shout at those people to start following. And they thought, what, let's not bother trying to ask nicely. Let's just start swearing at them all. So yeah, I can definitely understand them. That I do really empathize with them, but at the same time, it is their job to be security. And I think, when you're working, you do need to maintain a level of professionalism and just generally as a human being, just being nice to one another and giving people a chance to follow instructions normally the first time rather than just immediately assuming the worst and then swearing at them. Because that was definitely like, yeah, I don't know who Silverstone hired for their security. I don't know what like groups they were with, but I personally would not hire them to my event if I was doing an event.
Yeah, we discussed this before we started recording, that it was important to state that the team likely isn't employed directly by Silverstone. It's an outsourced business. Obviously they do therefore have responsibility, but this isn't Silverstone's doing. But yes, you're also right. Nothing excuses this behavior, regardless of how tired, how annoyed you are. You do have to maintain a level of professionalism.
Yeah.
How would you want Silverstone to react to this? Do you want the track to apologise? Obviously, potentially looking further into the businesses they employ or the training they undertake.
I think that's a really tricky one because obviously I'm not a person that goes around hiring security guards, so I wouldn't really know what the internal process is like. It could be nice if they apologize, but it could also cause more drama and, because I know it definitely wasn't me that had an experience like this. Actually, when I got back to my family, my mum said that she'd been shouted at as well. Not quite as much as I got shouted at, but she still got shouted at. And she was trying to actually ask another security guard where I was. So she was trying to find me because I said I was on the Hamilton Straight. By the time she got there, it had been cleared out and she was at Abbey. So she went to try and ask, she was describing what I was wearing and saying, have you seen this girl? And she got shouted at while doing that. So it's oh, okay. But yeah, I think it would definitely help to perhaps look into maybe who they're hiring as security. I don't know if it's just generally how security are though, because I don't tend to go to big events with security. Perhaps it would be worth them flagging it up to whoever it was they did hire so that they can perhaps speak with their employees and maybe try and come up with a way to be a little more kind and respectful. Because I feel like, I'm sure it's not just me, but I feel like people respond a lot better to being told nicely and respectfully to do things than getting sworn at and shouted, if someone asks me nicely to do something, I'll be like, sure. But if someone's shouting at me, I'm going to be like, ugh. I'm going to be more scared by them shouting than actually focusing on the instruction they've just given. So, and generally, that's another thing. As security, your job is to keep everyone calm and following instructions. If you're shouting and swearing at people, you're just going to rile them up. And that sort of thing is going to lead to fights, any sort of altercation. So I just don't think it's the right way to go about things at all.
Yeah. No, I've been to Silverstone a number of times as a fan, and I've been lucky enough not to encounter something like this so far. So it looks like it's a very isolated incident. But yeah, like I said, I do believe Silverstone has a responsibility to take responsibility, admit there was a small but important incident that they need to look at, they need to change.
And again, I want to clarify, it wasn't just me. A lot of other people who I talked to also experienced similar, getting shouted and sworn at. So, you know, it does seem like it was more than just that one security guard who I encountered. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your tweets so far, last time I looked, there was 40,000 views, which is pretty good. That's a tweet. And yes, several replies of people agreeing with you, including a Red Bull engineer, a credible source. So yeah, it's definitely something Silverstone has to look at. So I'll be reaching out to Silverstone. I'll be as long as you're okay with this, I'll be reaching out, asking for them to comment. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. You do create a lot of F1 related content yourself, so I would like to give the opportunity of telling people where they can find you.
Cool. Yeah. So I do like F1 content and broader motorsport stuff. So a bit of Formula E, a bit of GB3, starting to get more into some other series as well, like endurance racing. You can find me on pretty much any social media platform under the username LastLapLucy. I love an alliteration. So my favorite is my TikTok and my YouTube channel, but you know, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and now Threads as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for talking to us.
It's fair to say that, yes, Lucy agrees that it's a very small part of her experience. Silverstone needs to take some sort of responsibility for what happened. Yes, it's, in comparison to the whole weekend, it's a very small part. But when you're paying such incredible prices to watch what is a legendary league of motorsport, you don't expect that kind of abuse anywhere. So, we'll be reaching out to Silverstone, and hopefully when I get a comment from them, I can update you. If anyone else out there has any stories of anything like this happening to them at Silverstone or any other track, please let me know. I'd love to talk with you. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.